Hello and welcome to Quarterlight, your car brochure channel. And in today's episode, I thought we'd have a look at the Mark II Granada diesel. Hello and welcome back. And Quarterlight, if you don't know, we're a car brochure channel here on YouTube, looking at car brochures from around the world for the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s, and sometimes beyond that as well. So if you're interested in cars, car brochures, car facts, please consider subscribing. It's very much appreciated and really does help the channel. Anyway, back to today's episode. This particular episode was first aired on a Friday, and we call those episodes Ford Friday episodes because we look at a Ford every Friday. Today is no exception. We're going to be looking at the Fordgranada Mark II, and in particular the diesel models. So we've got a few little brochures to have a look at, so let's jump straight into it. And here's one of the brochures we're going to look at, and this particular brochure is the reason why I decided to have a look at the diesels actually, and I'll show you why in a moment. I must admit, the Ford brochures were always my favourite. I'm not saying I'm a huge Ford fan, even though we do Ford Fridays, but I do Fords because, you know, and generally they're the cars you kind of like remember from your childhood because they were literally everywhere. And I must admit, Ford cars brochure that came out, the old model catalogue, were some of my favourite brochures, and always, as a young child, they were always the ones I was most excited to look at because they're really well laid out and lots of detail. Like I said, this one's from February 78, although we will be looking at some others as well. But rather nicely there, we've got a Mark II Granada on the front cover. And you'll notice from this period, the emphasis was really on the Mark II Granada. It was very often on front covers, and some really nice brochures around this time for them. Let's just zoom in on this example. And we have a nice little zoom in on this particular example in a very nice shade of green, the Estate. Now the Mark II ran from 1977 to 1985, so this is the early days of the Fordgranada Mark II. It was released in August 77 for the 1978 model year. Actually, internally, the Mark II Granada was known as the Granada 78. It did have a bit of a facelift around about 81 as well, didn't it? Now, at this time, though, it was a really good seller in the UK, peaking around about 1979 when it was the 7th best selling car in the UK. Which is surprising really, because here in the UK this was kind of like a range topping car really. Overall, not everyone had a Granada, but you kind of like aspired to have one really because it was the flagship model, and in the UK at least it looked like a really big car. Now, those of you in Australia, and there's quite a few actually viewers in Australia, so welcome and thank you for watching. And incidentally, those viewers actually watch Ford Friday on a Saturday, but there we go. But yeah, they probably recognise this because it had a certain look of the Australian XD series Falcons, from the visual aspect at least, which went from around about 79 to 82. But actually, if you stood them side by side, you would note that the Falcon is significantly larger than these cars. But nevertheless, in the UK it was a big car when you looked at the other cars around it at the time, although I guess if you saw a Granada today with the sort of SUVs that everyone's obsessed with these days, even these large cars weirdly look small by today's standards. Anyway, going back to the brochure itself, I won't say the Granada was a great snow car. He's here seen in this snow scene, of course. This catalogue from February 78, sort of skiing season. I don't think it's actually driven up there on its own. In fact, it's been kind of like superimposed on that background together with that guy in his skis by the looks of it, and the lady as well. The shadows don't really line up, and like I say, No snow on the car at all, or the tyres or anything, or even any tracks where the car has been. A very strange scene, but like I say, these big rear wheel drive Fords were never really renowned for being great at the snow. In fact, throw a couple of bags of cement in there to get it up a hill in winter in the UK. Anyway, let's turn the page and I'll show you why we're going to look at the Granada diesels. And yes, as we open this brochure, as I did earlier on, just browsing through brochures as you do, and certainly I do anyway, even when I'm not looking at these episodes, I'm still browsing brochures because I think they're fascinating. At the top there, the left hand corner, now available, the new Ford Granada diesel. Yeah, very often these Ford brochures, they had something on the front page that was something interesting, something new, something that they really wanted to draw your attention to, because here we have now these big Granadas now in a diesel, so fuel economy was also possible with these big cars. Let's just zoom in to see what it's saying. The Ford Granada now boasts a diesel model to add to its extensive range of superbly engineered engines. The rugged and well-proven Granada diesel offers high fuel economy, particularly in town driving conditions. For further details, refer to pages 59 and 60, or better still, ask your Ford dealer for a test drive. So yeah, I'm sure the average person never did. I mean, you know, I don't think the average Granada buyer was really looking for a diesel. They was probably looking more at things like GLs, and dare I say it, a nice gear would really be something everyone really aspired to have, and that's what would draw the crowds in. A diesel, very much for the forgotten Granada really, and I think most of them ended up in the hands of taxi companies. Lots of space, and as it says, high fuel economy, particularly in town driving situations, which is really what a taxi is all about. So where did these engines come from? What sizes were they? Well, Ford at the time signed a bit of a contract with Peugeot, of all people, to buy their 2.1 litre diesel XD engines. Great, yeah, the new little engine in there. Get a few more customers, particularly that diesel crowd, that taxi crowd. You know, let's move into that. But kind of like the story goes, that soon after they signed that contract, Peugeot announced the new, more powerful 2.3 litre and said, Ford, you can't have that. The contract's been signed. So these diesel had the smaller 2.1, where probably that 2.3 might have been a bit of a better engine, but Peugeot said, no, that's our new engine, you're not having that one. So the story goes, at least. But anyway, enough waffle. Let's get to these Mark II Granadas. Have a look at them. Have a quick look at the range, and then the diesels, and then how it moved on from there. Oh, and incidentally, just before we do actually get there, I thought I'd throw the October 77 brochure up just to compare. That they didn't really change much in these brochures from months to month to year really. 77, we've got the new Ford Fiesta. Yes, this beautiful little car. Oh, what a beautiful baby. Now if we look at the newer one in 78, all the same text. Oh, what a beautiful baby. We'll change it to black text, but it says exactly the same thing, and we just remove the word new from there, just to give you an idea how Ford worked with these brochures. Anyway, like I say, let's get on with the Granadas, which is what we're supposed to be doing, so let's stop all this waffle. And as we go a long way along the brochure, past the Capris, and then eventually get to the Granada, here we see it, the new Ford Granada, emphasis on engineering. Now the word emphasis on engineering was used over and over again to showcase the Granada. Most of the brochures at some point had, emphasis on engineering for these Mark II Granadas, and every car has a bit of a tagline. This one doesn't really roll off the tongue, and it's not something very memorable, but they kept using it over and over again. The actual proper big brochure just for the Granada, again, emphasis on engineering. And even if we move up to, what else have we got here? There's a brochure here dated January 1980. Just get to the right page. A more realistic picture, but again, emphasis on engineering. So let's just have a quick look what the range had, and then we'll get to the diesel engine. So let's turn that page. So the range starts with the Granada L, and actually this time I didn't mind the Granada L. It looks quite a nice car, and certainly as a kid, if I saw one of these, I would have certainly thought, wow, someone's got a Granada, even though it's the base model. We got quite nice wheels, sort of these sporty looking wheels, although, you know, they are steel wheels, but not too bad. Obviously, not much equipment in there, but overall, a lot of space and not a bad package. Engine-wise, we can have it with a 2 litre or even a 2.3 litre V6, which was quite surprising on an L model, but no sign of a diesel, so let's move along the range. Yes, your GL, emphasis on luxury. A few more fine things like a bit of fake wood. Nice vinyl roof though, that's very much approved. You could get this with your 2.3 litre V6 or a 2.8 litre V6 or a 2.8 litre V6 fuel injection. All of the fancy. This particular colour, I guess we should say what particular colour this was as well. This looks like it's Strator Silver by the looks of it. And then this one here will be in blue, obviously. I think it's called, is it Hawaiian blue? I think it's Hawaiian blue, this one. And then certainly the car you aspire to have, and you know, I think these were when your gear badge really meant something. Lovely interiors. This particular colour is oyster gold, which was very much the car colour of the time. You know, even looking at the main brochure for the new Fordgranada, again it's in that oyster gold. That was really the colour for the car. I think that was the colour that really suited as well. I don't know if you can make out these big washers for the headlamps. Lovely interiors, lovely wood. 2.8 V6, 2.8 litre V6 fuel injection. Very nice. No sign of a diesel though, so let's move on. So we turn the page once again and still no sign of diesels. We're at Granada Estates now. Various different engine sizes for these, and indeed various different trim levels as well. So the L could be had with a 2 litre or a 2.3 litre V6. We can also have this at this time with the GL with a 2.8 V6 or a 2.8 litre V6 fuel injection. But like I say, still no diesel. At this time we still couldn't get a diesel on your estate. So we're still very much in the land of petrol powered vehicles, but certainly a very practical vehicle. Very interesting wheels actually on this particular example. Very basic silver wheels, but they kind of like stand out very strangely, don't they? They almost look like they've got a bit of a chrome sort of beauty rim on that particular example. This particular picture is actually showing it just as the lowly L. I think the GL actually came with alloy wheels for the estate at this particular time, but these are just steel, so I wouldn't imagine they were sort of like any sort of chrome beauty rings on there. But I don't know, they kind of like stood out a little bit for me. Again, I'm waffling. Let's get to those diesels. And here we can finally get to the diesels, strangely sharing the place with the Granada S, which is very weird. The S came after the estates. I don't really understand how they kind of like made this arrangement, but the S, you know, your typical Ford driving lamps. You've got a 2.8 V6 fuel injection engine, probably the car you really wanted, but there it is, the lovely Granada diesel. So pretty much like a bit of a plain model, although some strange little additions and add-ons. It looks very plain next to the Granada S, of course. This particular example is in Venetian red, and if we move the camera down, it tells us Granada diesel for high mileage motoring. 2.1 litre diesel, of course that Peugeot engine, 4-speed all synchromesh gearbox, independent suspension front and rear, dual line servo assisted brakes, radial ply tyres, laminated windscreen, hazard warning lights and a heated rear window. Sneak peek of the interior of this particular model in this sort of black fabric trim. Pretty dark and sombre in there, I must admit. A few of the specifications there, so a 2.1 and then a 4-speed all synchromesh gearbox. Front is independent suspension, independent front and rear suspension I should say. Front is independent with double wishbone, isolated by rubber mountings, coil springs, lubricated for life, ball joints, subframe mounted anti-roll bar. Rear independent semi-trailing arm, coil sprung type with 2 plunging constant velocity joints on each half shaft. Whole unit mounted on bonded rubber isolators to body. Brakes, we've got front disc, rear drums, wheels, sports road wheels, so it sounds fancy, although it's the same sort of wheel that you put on the L Saloon, although interestingly the L Estate had some very basic steel wheels. We've also got some information about the lighting and electrical, some information about the body, although I think it's very similar to an L actually. I'm not going to read it all out, but if you do want to read it all, I'm sure you can just about make that out. If we move down still further, we have got information about the interior. Again, I'm not going to read all this out, but it's there if you really want to read it all yourself, and you can pause that now, and then I'll move the screen down, and that is the rest of the interior equipment. And at the bottom there, just a confirmation that it is telling us that is a 2.1 litre diesel in Venetian red with black fabric trim. And there she is again. Now, on this main Granada brochure, and actually this is dated 77, so it's earlier, we've got some weird features. Look at those wheels. I've never seen that wheel sort of set up before on these, so they're very interesting. We've got a bit of a tape stripe going down this one, so I don't know if this one ever actually made it in production. I've certainly never seen those particular wheels on there. Interesting as well, we've got 2 door mirrors, and doesn't sound much of course, but in the 70s in the UK, not many cars had 2 door mirrors like that. We've also got some nice little image of that diesel. If I can clear the camera up so you can see that. So there's the diesel. Again, we get another little image of that interior. And it tells us there's always something new from Ford, and as part of the all new Granada range, a new diesel engine will be available in 78. So this is a very early 77 brochure for the Granada, so you couldn't actually buy the Granada here, so this is kind of like a bit of a pre-production one. That 2.1 litre engine gives you the benefits of low fuel consumption and a long reliable life. For someone who really clocks up a lot of mileages, especially in town, the Granada diesel could easily be the car they've been looking for. Again, a bit of a shout out to to taxis I should say, although it never mentions the word taxi anywhere. All the advantages of a diesel, plus all the other advantages of Granada as well: comfort, reliability, good ride, good road holding, and of course good looks. Now moving on still further to this brochure, and this particular brochure is actually again a full range brochure. Again, if you notice, still promoting the Granada, Fordgranada in Cosmos Blue this time. This one's from January 1980. But if we move to the diesel page, we've not only got the diesel now, we've actually got something called the taxi pack. And also those that observe it will notice the S has now become a pack. So yes, the diesel has still got those sort of sports road wheels on it. Still a similar sort of story, that 2.1 litre diesel engine, 4-speed all synchromesh gearbox. But now we can get the taxi pack. So now Ford are actually saying, this is good for taxis, which was kind of like always in our mind when we read those previous brochures, but they're actually now admitting it. Now I don't know which way around this went. Was it a case of it was designed as a taxi but they just never used that word, or more likely was it a case of that they saw taxi companies buying all these diesels when the general public weren't really interested, so they came up with a taxi pack. So a taxi pack is available as an option at extra cost on the Granada diesel and Granada L saloons. So looks like you can get the taxi pack on the petrol L as well. It consists of the following items: heavy duty seats, heavy duty trim on door panels, additional sound insulation materials in passenger compartments, ashtrays on all 4 doors, a boot light, 2 additional interior lights, modified centre console designed to accept electronic taximeter, electrical suppression for 2-way radio, extended wiring for roof mounted sign and taximeter drive cable, visual acoustic alarm system triggered by a foot switch near the clutch pedal. So a bit of a, in case the passengers were being a bit of an idiot, you can press this little alarm with your foot. So that was certainly a little bit of an interesting one. Tiny print at the bottom there tells us the taxi pack is available without this feature on special request, so I guess you didn't have to have that little bit of an alarm for whatever reason. I don't know why you would say you don't want it, but there we go. And then finally they're throwing out brochures now with Fordgranada taxi. This particular brochure is from 81, interestingly enough, so it's just a Fordgranada taxi, and yes, these are diesels now. Throwing interesting features, and again now we've gone down to just having a very basic steel wheel. They added these very weird fog lamps on the taxi version for whatever reason, although in reality this particular front picture isn't actually the Granada taxi version. In fact, they forgot to draw the second fog light on there. Corrected as we turn the page, but it's a really nice picture actually of this version. You can actually see the taxi on the top there, the fog lamps which weren't on the L, they were just added to the diesel taxi for, like I say, whatever reason. And interesting, this one's in red. I think a lot of the taxis, the diesel taxi Granadas, were actually just black, so this is an unusual one in red. And actually this particular brochure is really intended to tempt you into buying a taxi as a business, outlining all the advantages of buying a diesel over a petrol if you're going into the business as a taxi. And really the only real advantage were to offset the fact that it was quite hideous to drive and really slow, was the fact that it was, your profits were going to be way up if you chose a diesel over a petrol in the terms of having a business. So really now Ford have really admitted that nobody really wants this very crude diesel engine in their Granada. People want luxury in your Granada. It's a flagship model. We want a gear with a nice big V6 in there. We don't really want this diesel, so who wants it? It's a taxi. Let's put the taxi name on there. Let's sell them as a taxi, because that's who's been buying them all along. So there we go, the Fordgranada Mk II diesel. An interesting car, but like one of those cars you don't really remember it. It's very much a forgotten car, although more than likely you probably got picked up on a Friday or a Saturday night in a Granada diesel taxi. By 1982, of course, we got a better engine. We got a 2.5, which was much more capable for this size of vehicle. And of course, we could then finally get it as an estate car. Thank you so much for watching Course Light today and the Granada diesels. Many more episodes to come every Friday is Ford Friday, and then many other makes and models during the week. We actually do episodes 4 times a week now, so I'm sure there's always something for you. So please don't forget to like and subscribe. Subscribe really helps the channel, and then even you can become a member if you so wish. I've added a couple of boxes there. They're actually other episodes that you may have missed. Just click on that and it will take you to that episode. And we've also got the back catalogue if you want to look at others. Hundreds and hundreds of videos now to have a look at. That circle is also there. That's our logo, little cat and Quarterlight logo. Click on that and that is how you subscribe, and of course that is completely free. Thank you for watching. Take care and goodbye.